Hey, welcome to the show. We're going to get started in just a minute. Welcome to the show. We're going to get started in just a minute. Matt Corte says, hi, how are you? I'm good, Matt. How are you? Thank you for joining the show. What state are you in, Matt? Matt says, okay, pretty good. Matt Corte, what state are you in? Ohio. Okay. Always like to know, as you think about the vote for the 2024 election. Just like to understand what state different people are representing. For everybody who's joining, thank you. We're going to get started in just a minute. Scott Williams, I'm from England. How's it going? It's going well, Scott. Thank you for signing in from England. What part of England are you in? I was in England once, long time ago, but when I did my European backpacking tour. Costco, what is that? I'm not sure. I'm just going to call you Costco. I look like 25 cents, half of 50 cents. Okay. If I was half of 50 cent, he's pretty famous, so halfway famous, I could live with that. Sonu says, love from India. Thank you, Sonu. Wow, we've got people coming in from all over the world. I am very excited about that. Scott Williams, St. Helens, halfway between Manchester and Liverpool. Okay, well, I wasn't in St. Helens. I mean, I visited the castle, and I stayed in a dumpy hostel in the King's Cross because I didn't know any better at the time. It was my first time in England. I'll eventually go back. I'm a tennis fan. I'll want to see Wimbledon. Chrissy D, Washington State. DRW Brad 31 is coming in from Maryland. Nice. ADBC, you black. Yes, I am. Thank you for noticing. All right. Let me see. Got some theme music to turn off, but if anybody else wants to let me know where they're, because talking about the election and keeping track of the election's latest news is part of the fun. Okay, I think we can get started. So if you're new to the channel, click like and subscribe. Click the notification bell if you like the content, so you'll be notified when I do more of my pop-up lives. My name is Gene. My screen name is The Last Good Man in Jersey. And I generally talk about two things, travel and politics. This being an election year, I'm talking more about politics than anything else, because I think that the race between Biden and Trump is going to be one of the most exciting presidential races we've had in a long time. We've got two very interesting candidates. We've got a rather unique situation in that this is a rematch of last year's election. This is the first time that's happened in my lifetime. And I think that on election night, it's anybody's guess as to who's going to win. When we look at 2020 and how close the election was in 2020, literally coming down to a few thousand votes in a few key swing states, I think it's going to be very important for everybody to get out and vote. And I want everybody to understand the issues, and I want to understand what people are voting for. So we will be talking today about a particular set of comments we got to a video. But before I do that, let me just catch up on some comments, and then we will come back and start talking through. ADBC, you like Trump or Biden? I'm going to tell you something, ADBC. I have a very unpopular opinion. I don't think Trump or Biden are bad candidates. I think they've both got strengths. I think they've both got weaknesses. Generally, I think that Trump's got better domestic. He's got a better domestic approach. I think Biden's got a better foreign approach, and I think that both approaches are important to making America stronger. So I really just try to focus on who do people like and why. That's basically what I try to do. Let me catch up on comments, because I'm trying to read comments and I'm trying to think about what I'm talking about, and it gets stuck. Who wins, Trump, Biden, or Diddy? Yeah, well, where is Diddy now? I don't really keep track of his story, but that guy's got problems, and I believe he's fled the country. He might be in jail for all I know. I really don't keep track. In terms of who's going to win, Trump or Biden, I don't know who's going to win, but I look at it this way. 2024 is a rematch of 2020. So here's the reality of where we are today. If the exact same people go to the polls and they vote the exact same way they did last time, then Biden would win. Biden would have a little bit over 300 electoral votes. Trump would have a little bit over 230 electoral votes. For that to change, voting has to change. The question is voting changing, and if so, how? I think that we've got 6 swing states that are really going to decide the election. I think 2 of those swing states, Georgia and Pennsylvania, are pretty much already decided. So it's going to boil down to really 4 states. And I also think that at about 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on election night, we're going to know who the president is. Because at 8 p.m. on election night, Michigan is going to get called. And if all of the states in 2024 vote the way they did in 2020, then when we get to Michigan, that's going to tell us the whole election. Because whoever takes Michigan is going to basically be at 270 when you look at everything else that's going to transpire, and we will know who the president is. So that's my prediction. This is still anybody's guess, but I do believe, given everything I've seen for the last 2 elections, that that's what's going to happen. Let me see. Scientist baffled. You got a head coming out of the top of your head. We always get some trolls. My only request to the trolls is troll hard. Give me something to work with. You voted for Obama in 2020. If you mean I voted for Biden, believing that Obama was pulling the strings, I could follow that. Chrissy D, yes, vote. Absolutely. Vote. Gloria all day, voting on the side of sanity. Okay, Gloria, now, here's my question for you. Biden supporters would say they're voting on the side of sanity. Trump supporters would also say they're voting on the side of sanity. So, who do you think is more sane? Takaya, I'm not sure kind of what you're going after there. I'll call you Tokai. Biden has a horrible approach altogether. Some people say that. Let's face it. Trump supporters don't like anything Biden's doing. Biden supporters generally don't like anything Trump's doing. But the fact of the matter is that half of voters like Biden. Half of voters like Trump. Might be fair to say half of voters like Trump and the other half of voters hate Trump, and that's why they're voting for Biden. But that's the way the country is divided right now. So it's going to be interesting. Corn Pop said, dang, a person on the internet. There's a lot of nuance to the conversation, but it seems not many people pay attention to the nuance. Well, so you're right, person on the internet. If you start to look at policy and you really start to get into these issues, there is a lot of nuance. But here's the thing I'll say. It's not the American people's job to study the nuance. It's the candidate's job to simplify these things down to ideas that people can understand. I mean, if we want to talk foreign policy, yeah, people can understand that we don't want to see people dying anywhere. But they can also understand that we don't want U.S. dollars wasted on what seems like unwinnable wars. There's tons of nuance, but people want the broad strokes. If we look at the border, yeah, people don't want criminals coming into the country. People also don't want their prices to go up. So if you get into all of the issues, there's a lot of nuance. Not everybody gets into that. It's the president's job, or the potential president's job, to explain the issue in a way that makes sense to people. And we're going to see in these next few weeks, as Biden and Trump go out and do their campaigning, who does a better job of convincing America that they've got America's best interests in mind. I think this race is undecided at the moment, and we're going to find out where things are on election night. Sonu, Narendra Modi is best for India. Okay, I am not up to speed on everything with India, so I will just acknowledge the comment. ADBC, I can respect your neutral stance when it comes to politics. Very rare indeed. But he still doesn't like Biden. Well, that's the thing, ADBC. I mean, the real advantage, part of what I try to do with this show is, honestly, I got tired of going out and trying to figure out what's happening and always getting a biased spin. I knew if I went to certain networks, they were going to be pro-Biden. If I went to other networks, they were going to be pro-Trump. Trying to get to the real story felt impossible because I can't rely on a network to give me the real story. Everything's got a spin. You want to take a look at Trump when he gets misquoted. If you understand the context of how things were said, oftentimes they're misrepresenting what he said. Take a look at Biden and some of the videos they have of him looking confused. If you understand the situation that was happening, it wasn't him looking confused, it was him doing something, but it was misrepresented. Everybody's got a bias, and it's just a little tiring to not be able to have a real conversation with people about issues because people start separating on party lines and no conversation actually happens. I've got friends who are Democrats, I've got friends who are Republicans. We can agree to disagree on issues. What we all agree on is we all love the country. We all want to see America strong. We might have different opinions about how to get there, but basically it's a group of people who love the country and have the country's best interests in mind. And if we can sit down and have the conversation, then maybe we can move the ball forward. Ninja, you look like you need to use the bathroom. Okay, troll a little harder. If you're gonna troll hard. Lucas Drennan, it's going to be a close race. I completely agree with you, Lucas. I think it's going to be a very close race. Let's face it. There are 6 swing states that'll decide the election. I think Georgia's already going to go to Trump. I think Pennsylvania's already going to go to Biden. That's going to put both of them at really close to 270 electoral votes. Whoever gets Michigan basically is going to take it. And I don't think Michigan is decided. I think Michigan right now, if it were happening today, would lean a little bit more Biden just because he stood on the picket lines in Michigan. But that was over a year ago, and policies are changing and the economy looks different. And I think that we're going to have to see what these candidates do in the coming weeks to really sell themselves, because that's going to be where the rubber meets the road. Let me see. Premium improvements, Trump #1. Salad Z, less than half. Less than half. Not sure what you mean there, Salad Z. Feels like I caught the only part of it. Unless you're saying less than half believe in Biden or less than half believe in Trump. Corn Pop. I think it is the job of the populace to know the issues. The issues can't be dumbed down. They are complex. That's why we are in this mess. Okay, so I hear what you're saying, Corn Pop, but I don't fully agree. Here's what I think people need to do. Here's what I think people do, and I don't fault them for it. I think for the most part, people vote their pocket. Which candidate's going to help me provide for my family the best? And that's really all people care about. If this first guy is going to put more money in my pocket, that's who I'm voting for. If this next guy is going to put more money in my pocket, that's who I'm voting for. There are a lot of other issues that are interesting, but they're not going to decide who I cast a vote for when it comes right down to it. Let's face it, you could tell me that one guy's got the best foreign policy on the planet. If he's going to cost me more money than the other guy, he's not getting my vote. You can tell me the next guy is going to clean up the environment. I mean, I'm talking for the rest of eternity. The air on the planet is going to be great. But he's going to cost me half my paycheck, and this other guy's going to put more money in my pocket. I'm voting for the other guy. I've got my family to feed. That's my first focus. So it's not up to, I don't feel like it's up to voters to understand the issues in detail. I do think voters need to have a clear understanding of the financial implications of what they're doing. So if you think one guy's helping you out and the other guy's actually the one who's helping you out, I think voters need to know that so they can make an actual informed vote. But beyond that, if presidents want issues to be big deals in voting, they've got to make them big deals. I put that entirely on them. Corn Pop, but they think about it in the short term. That's a problem. That's a problem with the system that we're in. Let's face it, you're running for a 4-year presidency. There are long-term issues that you would love to solve, but the fact of the matter is, I've got to address immediate issues so that I win a 4-year term. There are long-term things that I would love to do, but the only way that happens is if we get away from our election system, which I don't agree with. I believe in 4-year terms. We're America. We don't have kings. Let me see. Jersey Mike. I like that name. Jersey Mike subs. I'm riding with President Joe Biden. Okay, we got Biden supporters and Trump supporters in the audience. And I say, click like and subscribe if you like the content. Click the notification bell so that when more pop-up lives happen, you can participate. Daniel Pfaff. Jesus Christ loves you. Okay, so Daniel Pfaff is in here. Stumping for Jesus. Got it. Okay, so here's what we are going to do while we are here today. I want to talk about a video in the comments that came back because I asked the question, Biden versus Trump. Who do people think is going to do a better job with their rallies over these next few months as we're trying to set up for the election night? And got a lot of comments on it, which I found pretty interesting. A lot of it was unexpected. But I like to share where America's head is, because what's funny to me, one of the things that's funny to me, is that Trump supporters don't understand Biden supporters a lot of the time. Biden supporters don't understand Trump supporters a lot of the time. You'll see an issue and people will take two very different feelings away from an issue, and they just can't understand how people could see it any other way. One of the funniest comments I ever got was a guy who was commenting on one of my videos and basically said, how can you say that this is a good thing? I think we were talking about the open border. We were talking about like the border policy. He's like, how could you say this is a good thing? Nobody in America would ever say that. And I just said, read the comment section. half of the people agree with you, but the other half of people don't. So just read the comment section and you'll understand exactly why I'm saying what I'm saying. And it was like the first time he stopped and listened, read about what other people thought. And he admitted that he was kind of depressed to see so many people who disagreed with his point of view, but at least he understood. It's like not everybody thinks the way you do. And that's really the way I approach this. It's like not everybody thinks the way I do. But I want to understand where people's heads are. And I feel like I'm getting a much cleaner sense for that. So we're going to talk about the comments people had about why they think Biden or Trump is going to win America's hearts over these next few months and ultimately win the election. And Ronald Gamber says, our President Joe Biden and Vice President Harris, love. Okay. So more support. Oh, and Ridge Runner 907, Chris Christie 2024. That guy's interesting. Carlos Danger, welcome back, Carlos. Biden 2024. Tonight's interesting. Normally, I would say that the audience is more. It feels like there are more Trump than Biden supporters. Tonight, it feels like there's more Biden than Trump supporters. I don't know, but everybody's welcome. I just found that interesting. We got a lot of Biden support in the audience tonight. Okay, so the video was asking who's going to rally harder, and a lot of interesting stuff came back. A lot of, hey, I hate Biden, but we get one comment that came from Derail07 that said, Trump supporters also love America. Now, I don't respond to a lot of the comments I get because a lot of times people are just saying crazy stuff, they're trolling, or they make a comment and they're not really asking a question. But when they said Trump supporters love America, I thought, well, I agree with that. I do think Trump supporters love America. I think Biden supporters love America too. I don't believe that Trump supporters or Biden supporters hate America. Not most of them. Now, sure, there are a couple on the fringes who might have problems, but I think by and large, we're talking about two groups of Americans who love their country and want their country to do well. But they got into some interesting comments when I said, hey, I think both parties. Okay, almost lost connection, but I'm back. I said, what do you mean you don't think everybody loves America? And they started referencing the politicians, so they sort of switched it. They felt like the problem with politics is politicians. And politicians are fundamentally just going after re-election. They're not really focusing on what helps the country. I agree with that in part. I think that politicians fundamentally want to do a good job, but I do think they're hamstrung because their first focus is getting reelected. And after they get reelected, they'll see what good they can do. But there's not really a solve for that short of giving them longer terms, which I don't agree with. Keep the terms short. Don't let anybody get stuck in there doing too much damage. And yeah, we'll see what's going on. We've got Ronald Gamber, stock market new high. I didn't check the stock market today, but I know things have been going well. Patrick, will Biden be holding any events open to the public? So I know he hasn't. Eventually, he's going to have to. Now, he hasn't really done any traditional rallying of late. He's been doing a lot of advertising. He's gone on podcasts. He did Howard Stern. He's done a couple of shows, and I expect to see more of that. But eventually, he's going to have to go into Michigan. He's going to have to go into Pennsylvania. He's going to have to go into Wisconsin. No way around that. He's going to have to go in, and he's going to have to rally in those three states. And he's going to have to hit a couple of cities in each where he's strongest to make sure that his voters show up and support him. So it may not have happened yet, but I think it is going to happen. One of the comments I made was about how Trump does a brilliant job with his marketing. And it's funny if you look at a Trump event, it's distinct. You got a wave of people, they've got red Make America Great hats on. They know the pitch, they know the slogan, they're cheering for Trump. There's a certain energy and feel to Trump events that Biden just doesn't have. Biden's events, it's kind of a traditional event. You show up, you see what he's got to say, and you go. But the energy's not there. And I think that Trump, by design, has created something that is much easier for people to kind of feel like they're a part of something. I think that Biden needs to really take a page out of Trump's playbook on that and start figuring out how he can capitalize on it. Otherwise, I could easily see people saying, you know what? I think that this Trump movement is the bigger, stronger thing. I would not put that past people at all. So that's just one of those little interesting things when you start looking at how they campaign differently. Um, where I say Trump, I got to give the check to Trump on that. He creates a lot more buzz around his events than Biden's been able to do. Ronald Gamber, inflation is declining. Dr. Sigrid, vote for Trump twice. Patrick, majority of all the gains in S&P came from 5 stocks. Majority of all, I don't know about, all right. If you take the 5 biggest companies in the world, I mean, what are you talking? You're talking like Google and Apple and whatnot. Sure, they're huge, but you've got, there are a couple of big pharma companies in there. There are a couple of big tech companies in there. There are a couple of big CPGs in there, consumer packaged goods. You've got to have growth across. You can't have growth in just one sector, raise all boats. But I wouldn't be surprised if if the big 5 were outpacing the rest of the S&P 500. Wages outpacing inflation. Ronald Gamber, avoid retribution. Now, wages outpacing inflation. That one's tricky. That gets into the economy. I think that that depends on where you are. I think that if you live in a big city or you work in a big city, yeah, I do think that you're going to have kind of a sense that wages are outpacing inflation. But I get the sense that in the small towns, they don't feel that way. They've had jobs, stable jobs they've been on for a lot longer, which means they haven't had the big raises, the jumps from moving from company to company. And that's why you have a lot of people complaining about prices. Because people are definitely complaining about prices these days. Complaining that, the money that they take with them to the grocery store doesn't go as far as it used to. And that's a real event. Now, there's a comment, we'll probably get to it, but it talks about where we are with the economy versus where we could have been. Because a lot of people who don't like prices, rightly so, will say my dollar's not going as far as it should have. And there was this one commenter who made a statement that I appreciated, because not a lot of people have looked at this, but they said, we were actually supposed to be in a recession right now, and we're not. So technically, the economy is not as bad as it's supposed to be. And I thought, wow, not a lot of people actually study that. You're right. Things are bad, but they were supposed to be much worse. A lot of people are going to vote based on how things are. So they don't care that we should be in a recession. They care about how much their dollar is getting them today. And if that's the way they vote, Biden's going to suffer on that. But if they looked at kind of the situation and they can appreciate it, they'll say, oh, yeah, I can't knock someone for actually keeping this boat afloat when we should have sunk a long time ago. Record high credit card debt. I haven't looked that up, but I wouldn't doubt it. What's your take in Agenda 2025? Okay, be a little more specific there, Carlos Danger, because there's a lot of stuff. I mean, are you talking about there's like the Republican 2025 plan, or you could, I'm not sure which way you're going with that. So just let me know what you mean there. Number one issue for voters is the economy, not because things are going great. Number one issue for voters is the economy. Number one issue for voters is pretty much always the economy. If the economy is doing well, if the president is going for re-election and the economy is doing well, he generally wins. If the economy is going into the toilet, generally loses. Where do people think the economy is right now is tricky, because if you're somebody who's making more money, but prices are also going up, overall, do you feel good about it? Overall, do you feel bad about it? That's going to be one of the questions that we have to understand. Medical bills not affected credit scores. Okay. Now we got a couple of things going on there because we're talking about medical and we're talking about credit scores. When you start talking medical, now we're starting to talk as an election issue. We're starting to talk about Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act, and that's a whole separate thing. And I don't know where people are on that, but I know that here's what I know about the Affordable Care Act and it's why it can be divisive. It depends on how it impacted you. If you're somebody who had insurance and suddenly you've got to pay more for your insurance, yeah. Or you didn't have coverage and suddenly you were forced to pay for coverage way back when, that left a sour taste in your mouth and you've probably hated Obamacare ever since then. If you're somebody who didn't have insurance because you had a pre-existing condition, and this is the way that you finally got insurance, well, you're probably sold on Obamacare and nobody's going to be able to tell you differently. So that it's very divisive, and it really just has to do with how it impacts you personally. For a lot of people, they've got a job and they've got health insurance through their company, which is what happens for most people. Then the Affordable Care Act probably didn't have much of an impact on them because it didn't apply. Patrick, more Trump supporters will show for a Biden rally. You think so, Pat? Now, that would be interesting. I don't think Trump supporters show up to support Trump. We haven't had enough instances of Biden doing something for us to see what Trump supporters will do at a Biden rally. We know that Biden supporters will go and they'll protest at a Trump rally. Trump did he did a rally in the Bronx, New York, not too long ago, and there were some, anti-protesters there. They didn't make a big stink, but they were there. Trump showed up at the Libertarian National Convention. There were a lot of Trump supporters at the Libertarian National Convention. I mean, it's kind of funny because people will say Trump got cheered and Trump got booed, and I always pointed out, well, a lot of the people who were at the Libertarian National Convention were Trump supporters, so they were cheering him. Libertarians do not like big government. They don't like Trump. They don't like Biden. So it doesn't matter who shows up. They're going to boo them both. And kudos to him for walking into that setting to ask for their nomination or their vote. But I wasn't surprised that he got booed. I don't think he was surprised that he got booed. I mean, he knew who he was going in there to face. If you're a New York Yankee and you walk in Boston Garden, don't expect them to cheer for you. You're the enemy as far as they're concerned. Same thing there. Srap cracks. Are you okay with gays, and what about migrant gays? Am I okay with gays? I don't really care. I don't have a problem with. I don't care who somebody chooses to date or love or marry. Honestly, I don't care. I would say, being perfectly frank, I don't really want to know. If you're gay, that's your business. I don't need to know. I don't need you, advertising it to me. I'm not going to say anything if you do because I don't want to offend anybody. I'm like, you know what? You live your life. I'll live my life. We'll be cool. If we need to work on something together, let's sit down and let's work on it. And I'll judge you based on how well we work together. Your orientation doesn't really matter. I work in a company where, there are gay people who work in our offices. I don't know how many. I don't count them up. We got some really smart guys who are gay. We got some knuckleheads who are gay. I don't stop and think about it from the standpoint of their sexual orientation. It's just, this is somebody who's good to work with. That's somebody who's not good to work with. And that's about as far as I take it. I think that if we spent less time focusing on people, like people promoting their identity, we'd all get along better. It's like, people don't want to know who I'm sleeping with. I don't tell them. It's my business, not theirs. That's generally the way I approach it. Ronald Gambler, relief for DACA and marriage-related immigrants. Again, it's okay. Marriage-related immigrants. That one is interesting. Yeah, we're gonna. we're going to have to see how this plays out. What I will say is this. There are issues that Biden does not really leverage his PR team for well. And the open borders and migration is one of them. It's an unpopular topic because Trump has controlled that narrative. Biden basically let him control the narrative, so that's on Biden's PR team, who I don't think is very good. Trump has turned migrants into like this criminal issue. People can understand that. Nobody wants drug dealers and murderers and all that stuff coming into the country. What gets lost is most of the people who migrate into the country aren't murderers or any of that. They're just law-abiding citizens who want jobs. But we don't talk about it that way. We also don't talk about the fact that they're taking jobs that a lot of people don't want. I'm not going to go work on a farm. I'm not going to work for minimum wage, that kind of stuff. But the narrative has been spun a specific way, and Biden doesn't really do anything to change it. So if he wants a new narrative around migrants, he's going to have to do something. And that's one of his Achilles heels. So I think that if Biden loses the election, his inability to spin the narrative around the economy and his inability to spin a better narrative around the borders, those are going to be the things that cost him the election if he loses. Ronald Gamber, tax reform. Ronald is a highly informed voter. I am definitely picking up on that. Yeah, I don't agree. I don't disagree with. I don't think I really disagree with anything you said. But I recognize that there are a lot of people who aren't going to get as deep into the issues. They're just not. And if you look at the issues on their surface, then people can have a very different take. And understanding what motivates people is what's important to winning the election. Getting into the weeds on the issues with voters in rallies, that's not going to win you votes. It's telling people things that they can understand and buy into. That's what's going to win you votes. Dr. Sigrid, tax cuts send DACA border crossers back. Yep, I know people are in different places on that. Corn pot, reported inflation. We got an interesting group here. We got people who know, we've got people who've clearly done some research who are part of the group tonight. I'm liking that. Patrick, 5 giant stocks are driving the S&P 500 to records. Goldman Sachs. Okay, I don't doubt that they're. I guess here's the thing that I would want to see, and admittedly I'll have to look it up. But here's what I know. If you look at the 5 biggest companies in America, yeah, they're going to be huge. But you got major pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer that are in the vicinity of like $100 billion. Tesla, how big is Tesla? There are a lot of companies that have a lot of bucks. So I struggle to think that 5 companies can do more to the S&P 500 than the 15 companies beneath them, because the 15 companies beneath them are not small. And so I would have to see the math. I'd have to look at the math on that, but I don't think that 5 companies are driving it. Maybe they're pulling in a direction and they're outperforming the rest of the market. I don't doubt that, but there are companies who are just too big to ignore. So I'd have to really look at the numbers on that. Ronald Gamber, I'm an old disabled veteran era veteran. Oh, thank you for your service, Ronald. Dr. Sigrid, Ronald, no, you're not. Okay, I take people at face value unless I get some confirmation that they're lying. So I don't have any reason to believe that he's lying. I don't know that he's telling the truth, but I'm going to assume he is until I see something that's contrary to that. Lucas Drennan, I posted that comment, my friend. Let me see. Lucas Drennan, what did you post? Oh, you posted the comment. Yeah, okay. You posted the comment to. Yes, that's right. So definitely thank you, Lucas. Because we've got some. Yeah, you have to mention. We're gonna get back to that. I'm just trying to catch up on all the comments. But yeah, you had some good comments on the video. Corn Pop, $15 meals at McDonald's for one person. I haven't had to spend $15. McDonald's is more expensive than it used to be. I'm in McDonald's like at least once a week. What are you buying for $15? Corn pops. Um, I mean, a Big Mac is what, $6? If you get a meal, that's like 9. That's the meal, there's fries and the drink. If you're doing $15, you're adding stuff. So yeah, I want to know what you're walking out. What are you eating? Justin Adams. I bought dinner the other night for my family of 3, and it was $55 at McDonald's. I'm voting Trump. It was 20 back then. Okay, so it was 55. That's easy to believe. If it's like $15 a person with the meal and supersized, that's like about $45 throwing a dessert or something. Yeah, okay. $20. So like 5 years ago, well, I should say more like 6 years ago before COVID, it was 20. Okay. Inflation, yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. I don't disagree with that at all. But here's the thing. The economy, I don't think the economy is just going to, right, let's play this out hypothetically. Let's say Trump wins the election. I don't think the economy is going to just flip-flop. That, it's going to take a while. Even if he's cutting, foreign spending and he's pumping dollars into the United States and he's driving up U.S. jobs, it's still going to take a while before the economy turns around. So if you're thinking economy, you have to think about it kind of long term. It's, who's going to be in place and what are they going to do and how long is it going to take for that to have an impact. There are much larger factors at play with the economy. So we're going to have to sit and deal with these prices for a while. And honestly, companies take prices up. They're very slow to bring prices back down. Yeah, sure, it'll eventually happen. Somebody will start doing some value meals and everybody will follow suit. But that's going to be slow in the making. So I would say we got to hunker down and get accustomed to these prices because these are going to be the prices for a while. Cook at home, yeah, that doesn't work for lunch. Breakfast, cook at home. Dinner, you can cook at home. You're going to be home anyway. You're at work, it's lunchtime, you're kind of stuck. Not everybody wants to bring their food, stick it in a company fridge, and reheat it. $55. What the heck did you? I can see $55. I can see somebody getting a meal and supersizing it, and it's like $15, and then 3 people do that, and then you add some desserts. Yeah, you still got a lot of food, but yeah, $55, I can do it. Corn pop, bro, skip me. I skipped you corn pop. Let me go back. $15 meal at McDonald's for one person. Yeah, that is. I was in McDonald's a couple of days ago. I bought what did I get? I got a Big Mac, and it was like a little bit less than $6. Didn't get the fries and the soda. If I got the whole meal, it would have been about $10. And that's not supersized, so yeah, now it's like 15. So I can believe. I don't have a problem believing $15. But if you're doing $15, you're eating a lot of food. You're not just you didn't just get the value meal, supersized. You got some other stuff. Patrick Bidenomics is higher prices, part-time jobs. Jack in the Crack. So you pro Obamacare? So am I pro Obamacare? Yes. Well, it's not so much pro. Okay. So here's a true story. When Obamacare was coming out, I worked for a healthcare company. And the guy who was in charge of our department, he took us through, he was infatuated with Obamacare before it came out. So we had our weekly meetings. We didn't talk about the state of the business. He wanted to talk about Obamacare. So I got I got way more up to speed on it than I planned to, because every week for an hour at work, we sat in on a meeting where he just talked about Obamacare. Here's the thing about Obamacare that we don't really talk about, but it's like the driver of Obamacare, and this part does make sense. Okay, if you look at Obamacare and the problem that it was solving, you have to look at it from a national level. Like, what does it do for America, not just what does it do for an individual. And the funny thing is, there are a lot of people who I would say basically abuse the healthcare system. I mean, there are a lot of people who are in the healthcare system, and when you look at them, they might be like homeless or low income people, but they have a lot of health problems and they run up massive health bills and they don't spend a dime paying them. So you got massive, massive healthcare debt that nobody's really paying for. And some of the money to pay for that gets siphoned out of Social Security. They're like, well, wait a minute. Why is it that so many people are paying for the health care of people who aren't necessarily taking the best care of themselves, but are taking advantage of all the health care benefits they can get? So part of what Obamacare did was it's kind of said, you know what? We're not just going to make the people who are working pay for this. We're going to kind of smooth it out. Everybody's got to take a bite of this stinky sandwich because these healthcare costs are out of control. And either we stop giving those people healthcare at all, or we just accept that everybody's got to kind of pay part of the cost because it's out of control and we're having to steal from Social Security to cover the cost. I'm using rough language for all of that. Obamacare went a long way in fixing that. So it said, look, you Joe Blow American aren't going to have to pay as much as you have been for the health care of these other people. But some other people are going to have to start paying. So maybe you didn't have health care before. Too bad. You got to pay a little bit too. Everybody's got to pay. It's not a fun position to be in. The first year of Obamacare, I think I had to pay a tax because I was trying to run my own company. So I didn't have the health care coverage for some of that time, and I didn't like that. But I understood what was going on when it actually when it happened. Social Security, VA, Plan B, vote blue for President Joe and Vice President Harris. No, I don't. It doesn't matter who's in office. You still have to get up and provide for yourself. So that's true. But what I will say, you got to get off your butt and you got to go to work. But are you going to work at a place where there are jobs that are accessible and that are good paying jobs? Or are you struggling because there are some jobs that are available but they don't pay that well? Or there are not that many jobs that are available? I mean, those are real issues, and sure, you got to get off the couch, but there need to be jobs available for people who want them. And I don't mean just like Uber drivers and all of that stuff. I mean actual, 40-hour-a-week stable jobs. Some of Trump's policies tend to focus more on kind of blue-collar jobs. He'll say drill, baby, drill, and he'll focus on energy, and there are a lot of jobs that people understand that they can kind of walk into immediately. Now, whether those jobs are available to them or not, that's a different question, but they understand the jobs that will be available. Biden tends to rely a bit more on tech and STEM, and so there'll be jobs, but people don't necessarily feel like they're jobs that are accessible to them right off the bat. That's one of the things that I think Trump has a big advantage on in his domestic policy. Oh, and while click like and subscribe and the notification bell so you'll be notified when I do more pop-up lives so that if you want to participate, you can be part of the conversation. Ronald Gamber. I'm in Palm Coast, Florida now from South Jersey. South Jersey. What part of South Jersey? As you can tell from my name, I'm Jersey. And Trump just had a rally in Wildwood. No, I don't. I respect the person, not the sin. So I'm assuming we're talking about Trump here. Yeah, I mean, if we go back down the rabbit hole of this whole court case, that's like a whole show. I did a show on that. We'll come back to that. The hush money case, the Trump convictions, that's messy. What I will say is, I think that if we're talking about a president and a conviction for a president, then the average American should be able to understand what the president was being convicted for. And I don't think the average American has a clear understanding of that. There are a lot of questions. I'm not clear on some of the nuances of how this case played out. And I think that's a huge misstep. And when Trump says he's being persecuted by a political rival, how do you argue that when people can't really clearly articulate what happened to him? Sure, you can articulate that he was convicted, but if you get into like the nuts and bolts of, well, how, a lot of people can't. And it's funny because, like, on the one hand, I think most people believe that Trump slept with Stormy Daniels, paid her to keep quiet, cooked his books to do so. Yeah, I don't think many people doubt that. I don't think many people really understand how that translated into now we have a presidential nominee who's a convicted felon. Like, there's a gap between there. And you can sort of explain it, but nobody's really done a good job of going from soup to nuts on all of the stuff. Ronald Gamber. I can't work, very frustrating. So what kind of work are you trying to do, Ronald? I mean, in this day and age, especially after COVID, with all the work from home stuff, with all the Zoom stuff, I would wonder what kind of work you're trying to do, because there's a lot of online work that's available to people that wasn't available before, and sometimes it's just a matter of picking up a laptop or picking up a phone and doing something that might be a little different than you're used to. Let me see. Corn Pop, can you acknowledge that there are legitimate reasons for closing the borders to stop criminals and terrorists from freely walking into the U.S.? So, I never denied that there are legitimate reasons for. Let me be clear, Corn Pop. I guess if we're talking about this, if we're talking about keeping criminals and terrorists out of the U.S., I 100% support that. I don't want criminals and terrorists in the U.S. But here's the thing. I don't want to pretend like we aren't benefiting from bringing migrants in. That's the thing that I think is lost. Because let's face it. Let's take the criminals and the terrorists kind of to a point. If we got a stack of migrants coming in, how many of them do you think are criminals and terrorists? The way the narrative is being spun, it's being spun like a huge chunk of them are bad actors. Fact of the matter is there's only a tiny portion who are bad actors. Now, they're really bad people, for sure, and I don't want to let any of them in. And if keeping the borders closed keeps them out, I don't have a problem with that. But I acknowledge that a lot of the people in this stack are going to go get regular old jobs, and here's the trick, they're going to start getting taxed, and their money's going to go into Social Security, and they're not going to be getting anything out because they're not citizens. So they are helping to fund our Social Security, which isn't infinite. I mean, it just got re-upped, but it was only good for we only had 20 years of Social Security left. So having people contributing to that, yeah, that's a good thing for Americans. I don't have a problem with that. I don't really tell people where to fall on the border issues, but I see the nuance of it, and I see the pros and cons of letting migrants in. I mean, let's be really clear. If we didn't have any terrorists or criminals in the group of migrants who were coming in, I don't think people would have an issue. Because they're coming in and they're taking jobs that we want them to take, because we don't want them. So, it's a tricky thing where the narrative and the reality of the open borders are two very different things. And I don't fault people for taking whatever position they take, but I do kind of see it for what it is. And there's a value to having people coming in and paying into our Social Security when they're not taking anything out. Ronald Gamber. I can and do work with PDA, Progressive Democrats of America, and Midas Touch Fighters. Okay. Okay, Ronald. If you have not subscribed, I encourage you to subscribe. I'd love to get you into the comments of the video. Just get a little bit of your story. We got another guy who's not here tonight, Dano Junkyard Dog. I think you two would get along. Michael Litchford. Man, let them live with you first, then bet you want. I don't even think it's a debate who will win fairly. Okay, so we got two different things here. Let them live with you. Okay, so I'm assuming let them live with you first is the migrants. I live in New Jersey. I mean, we got plenty of migrants in New York. That's a news article. Again, I don't want, there are bad elements in the migrants, and I don't want that. And I do have a problem seeing us more focused on migrants than Americans. When migrants are getting room and board and you got Americans who are struggling, yeah, I have an issue with that. Like, what? Help me understand how this is America first when it feels like we're taking care of everybody who's coming into the country more so than the people who live here and support the country and love the country. I got an issue with that, sure. But I don't look at migrants and just say that it's a big group of criminals and terrorists, because I know that most of them aren't. So that's why I don't get too caught up in that part. These are people who want to work. So you want to work, if you really want to work and you're going to do your work, okay, get to it. Now, to your second point, I don't even think it's a debate who will win fairly. I get that comment. That comment comes back a lot, and I'll tell you, I don't believe that the 2020 election was rigged. I get tons of comments from people. I've had tons of people who they've sent me like articles or different things that suggest that 2020 was rigged. I have yet to see anybody provide any hard evidence on that. And there are two different things that really kind of guide my thinking. Number one is Chris Krebs, who was the head of cybersecurity in 2020, lifelong Republican, voted for Trump twice, and he said it was the most secure election in history. So if he's saying that, he's the guy who's in charge of the security of all the ballots. He ran all the tests. He checked everything. And when he said it was the most secure election in history, he didn't really leave any room for doubt. He didn't say he felt it was he mostly felt it was good. He didn't say he didn't find anything wrong. No, he didn't leave any room. He said most secure election in history. That answered the question for me. But the second part is this. If I'm Trump and I've got definitive evidence that 2020 was rigged, I'm going to win 2024. If I'm Trump and I've got hard evidence that 2020 was rigged, I'm going to take that to court like right now. Unless I got the easiest campaign on the planet for 2024. Because if I'm Trump and that's true, all I'm going to do is say, Biden stole 2020. Here's the evidence to prove it. I'm going to have somebody thrown in jail for tampering, and that's my whole campaign. Biden stole 2020. Here's the data to prove it. And Biden wouldn't have a chance of winning the election. It would be game over. So if the data exists and it's ironclad data, then my question is, why isn't Trump using it? I know that people are going to have issues because, like I said, there were a lot of questions about 2020. There are a lot of people who still suggest that 2020 was rigged, but I haven't seen the ironclad evidence yet. And until somebody can put some ironclad evidence down in front of me, I'm going to say I don't have a reason to believe it was rigged. I do have reasons to believe it wasn't rigged. So that's where I am on that until somebody can prove me wrong. Let me see. Ronald Gamber says, MAGA Mike Speaker blocked bipartisan border bill. Okay, yeah, what goes into that? That was, I don't know that this is true, but I heard that Trump didn't want the bipartisan border bill because he didn't want Biden to take credit for it. And I wouldn't bring that up except Mitt Romney, Republican Mitt Romney, brought that up, and I thought, all right, if a Democrat brought that up, I wouldn't give it any credibility at all. But when a Republican says something about it, and I think, well, you're a Republican and you're saying it, he was not happy about it. I don't have all the details, but it was interesting that he was saying, look, we could solve this border crisis, but we have to get past kind of this bipartisan nonsense and start thinking about America first if we want to do that. A meal only $9, still too much. Yep, hey, McDonald's is expensive. Jack in the Crack, what do you think about this World War III lingering around? I don't believe we're going to go. I don't think there will ever be World War III, ever. Um, we're not. I mean, let's face it. Gaza is not even close to a world war. Gaza is, Israel and Palestine. The Ukraine, not even close to a world war. That's Russia and the Ukraine. World war? No. Well, if there was going to be another world war, the only way you have to be prepared for the threat of nuclear annihilation. That wasn't I mean, mutually assured destruction. That wasn't an issue in World War I, World War II. That would be an issue in a World War III. Who would be at odds in World War III? Like North Korea, who has nukes, Russia, who has nukes, and somebody else who has nukes. And you're not going to enter into that kind of a conflict unless you know going in, I might have to drop these bombs. And they're going to darn sure drop their bombs on me if I do that. So I don't think there will ever be a World War III. I don't think there can be. If there ever was, we're leaving the world to the rats and the roaches because we're all going to be gone. But that's just not. I can't ever see that happening. Let's face it. There's a reason why we're sending money to the Ukraine, but we're not sending troops. Somebody negotiated that. Somebody laid out some terms. Said, okay, you can only do so much before we're going to consider you part of the problem. And they clearly decided you can send money, but you can't send troops, and that's why we are where we are. Let me see. The food prices are up significantly. We lost several food processing plants to mysterious fires in the last few years. Well, food prices are up, sure. I mean, some of this is labor costs. Funny thing about COVID happened, and a lot of those low-end jobs kind of vanished. And when the jobs came back, a lot of people realized they don't have to do those low-end jobs. They can take jobs and make a lot more money. A whole lot of online work opened up. People had to start paying more to get employees in. Now you've suddenly got farms that need laborers and they can't pay them bare bones prices anymore because those people can get jobs someplace else to pay more. They got to charge more for the food, for the production of the food, which means they got to sell the food for more money. Now stores have to buy it for more money, and that means they're charging you more money at the back end to make up for all these increased expenses. Salaries went up, so costs went up. That's just capitalism. And we're kind of stuck with that. We're not going to go back to those low-end minimum wage jobs because people don't need them. One of my coffee shop I used to love, actually, it shut down. Used to have, its staff of minimum wage people. They'd spend their hours there. COVID hit, they closed, they opened their doors. I remember one of the women who used to work as a cashier. She came in one day and I was like, oh, hey, I haven't seen you in a while. And she said, yeah, they asked me to come back, but I don't know if I want to do this anymore because I can, for this pay, I could just work from home. She was there for like 2 days and clearly decided she didn't need the job anymore. They couldn't afford to keep employees because they couldn't afford what employees wanted to be paid now. That's just how it is. Let me see. Corn Pop. So he's talking about the plants. It was before that comment. Create a perverse incentive. What's the perverse in a meal only $9, still too much. What's the perverse incentive? Let me see. Mike Myers. Did you read and understand the last 2 years of job reports? Majority of government, which doesn't add to economy, and also 3/4 was immigrants. What are we talking about? Okay, you got a lot going on there. So if we're talking about job reports going back 2 years, all right, here's the job market. We had a strong job market, and then the job market went into the toilet because of COVID, and then it's been rebounding. I mean, if we're going back to the job market of 2 years ago, we've seen tremendous growth in the job market, but a lot of that is recovery jobs. People weren't working, now they're working again. So if we're starting to mix all of that with immigration and all of that, then it's a mess. immigrants are coming in and they're taking a lot of they're taking a lot of jobs that Americans don't want. Um, so yeah, if we're like, I guess the question for me is, what's your point on jobs and immigrants and how they affect them? Um, let me see. Anyavesky 904 asked you a question: Biden 2024, Trump 2024, and you are okay. So Anyavesky, you got to stop spamming. I didn't see your comment before. I see it now. Um, so for me, right now, and this is, yeah, if you're new to my channel, then you haven't heard my spin on this before. There's only one issue that I'm voting on, and it has to do with the type of work that I do. I bid on federal contracts. I haven't gotten any, but I bid on them, and I know that if I land a federal contract and I do good work, that's basically going to be life changing. I used to run a company. I get another federal contract, I can start my company back up again. But my contracts rely on one very specific thing, and that's foreign affairs. I need us to have an interest in foreign affairs, because if we've got the interest in foreign affairs, that means that certain contracts are going to come down the feed. If we don't care about foreign affairs, those contracts won't come down the feed. I like to think I do pretty good work. But if I'm competing with people to do work in the US, my pricing is just like everybody else's. There's nothing special about my product. Like, I can do the work, I can do a good job, but my price, the next guy's price, probably about the same. If I do foreign affairs work, I can give you great pricing, because I'll do things other people won't do. I'll take dirt cheap flights. It might take me 48 hours to get where I'm going. I don't care. It helps me cut into my price. I'll stay in crummy hotels. I'll do all kinds of things to bring my price down so I can have the best bid. But that only works if I'm doing foreign affairs work. You want me to fly to Indonesia and do some research? Sure, I can give you better pricing than everybody else. Right now, Biden's the only one who cares about that. If Trump wants my vote, he's got to change his approach to foreign affairs. I have to know that foreign affairs projects are going to come down the feed. I don't know if they both were going to have foreign affairs contracts coming down the feed, I would literally have to sit back and say, who's going to have more contracts? Because that would be my decision maker. Like, the guy who's going to give me more contracts is the guy who gives me more of a chance to win. So it's not that I don't think either candidate's bad, honestly. I think they've got strengths. I think they've got weaknesses. But for me, I vote my pocket, and my pocket is dependent upon who's going to have foreign affairs contracts. Right now, that's not, Trump's contracts don't do that. Now, Trump's got great contracts because Trump did things that Biden didn't do, that Obama didn't do. Trump had more of a focus on the veterans and services for veterans, and I hadn't seen those types of projects coming down the feed before Trump started. I think those are very necessary contracts, but that's not how I vote. I vote on who's going to provide contracts that I can actually take advantage of. And the veteran affairs stuff, well, my price is no better than anybody else's. So that's what comes from me. T Boppin EM 814. Then why not come in legally if they're going to come work? Okay. Here's the thing, T, and I'm not arguing for immigration or against immigration, but I'll say this. Let me think of it this way. Speed limit on the highway is 65. Now, I know the speed limit's 65. I know the cops know it's 65. But I know they're not going to give me a ticket if I'm going 70 and I'm in a hurry. I'm going to go 70. And as long as you're not going to give me a ticket, I'm going to go 70. So it says you're speeding. Yeah, so what? As long as I'm not getting punished for it, I'm going to keep speeding. If they decide to give me tickets, then I'll slow down. But until then, I'm going to go as fast as I can get away with it. Why don't they come in legally? Because they don't have to. Because they know they can get in without coming in legally. Hey, I can get in tomorrow. If I cross the border illegally, I can get in tomorrow and I can start working sooner. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, if you stop me from coming in and you force me to come in legally, okay, I can't speed in. So sure, I will follow the laws. I'll follow the rules. I'll slow it down. But I'm only going to slow it down if you make me. Funny thing is, our laws on immigration are actually pretty tight. It's the enforcement that's the issue. We don't enforce them. People aren't supposed to. I mean, they're coming in illegally. Not supposed to be in, but they are because they know they can. And I don't fault them for coming in illegally when they know they can get away with it. We have to decide what our stance is going to be and what our response is going to be, and that's really the issue. Okay. So, and Vesky 904, I've answered your question, I believe. So, let's cut the spamming out. Then we got this jobs report. 3/4 was immigrants. Ryan Gillespie wasn't rigged. Yep. Adrian, family values are being lost. Family values are being lost. That's not. I don't blame the presidents for that. I mean, that's just people. That's media. You want to see more sex, drugs, and rock and roll on TV? Yeah, sure. It's more fun. Does that lead to the corrosion of American values? Yeah, probably. You keep seeing sex and drugs and rock and roll on TV, and you get desensitized to it. Stuff that's on TV now compared to the stuff that's on TV when I was a kid. Oh, yeah, you couldn't show this stuff on TV. But nowadays, hey, that's just the way the world is. We like our vices more than we're willing to admit, and as individuals, you have to kind of make a decision about what you want to do. But as a nation, no, we will just get worse. As a nation, we will just get worse and worse. It's like human nature. But we'll see. Romney is a rhino. I don't know anybody who would disagree with that at this point, given the positions he's taking and how publicly he's taking them. But a rhino is still a Republican. So, yes, he's a rhino, but he's a Republican. The point is that our alliances will obligate us to go to war. All right. So let me ask you this, Corn Pop. If our alliance obligates us to go to war, why aren't we at war in the Ukraine right now? Why aren't we at war on the Gaza Strip right now? I don't think there's any obligation. And I definitely don't think there's ever going to be a World War III. But we will have to deal with this Russia-Ukraine thing. Honestly, that one was foreseeable. You might argue that the Gaza Strip was foreseeable, but it's that one's a little tricky. That's a holy war that's been going on. That conflict has been going on for over 1,000 years. So I don't know what you expect there. That's going to exist until the end of time. As long as you've got Christian and Muslim faiths, there's going to be conflict over there. So there's no way around, those things surfacing. Geraldine, do a backflip. Troll a little harder, my man. If we're going to troll, get some good trolling in. Tyree Green. Minimum wage supposed to be $15 an hour everywhere, or $20 an hour in some states. Okay. I mean, minimum wage, if prices go up, if wages go up, prices go up. So it doesn't really matter. Wayne Brady fell off. Are you calling me Wayne Brady, or are you talking about Wayne Brady himself? So you need a war. Corn Pop, so you need a war. No, I'm not saying we need a war. I'm saying war is inevitable. If you look at human history, you can track human history. They're like in all of human history, there are only a small percent of years where there was no war anywhere on the planet. I mean, literally, you can go back to I don't know how far back it's, as far back as it's tracked. There's always been a war. So that's just how it is. The new face of the military-industrial complex, because Ukraine isn't in NATO. Yeah, yes. Now, where Ukraine's going to fit, what promises were made and kept or not kept, that's all part of this whole Ukraine thing. But Russia doesn't want Ukraine to be Russia doesn't want vulnerability because you've got a democracy in the Ukraine, like right on their border. So I understand what's going on with the conflict. And as far as I can tell, it's a war that Ukraine can't win. So, we're just letting that boulder slowly roll down the hill. And that's kind of the strongest argument I've heard for questioning the financial support we're providing. It's like, what's the point when we know that this war is unwinnable? We're just delaying the inevitable. And I think that's a fair question. If I'm having a debate, that's a question I'm going to ask Biden is, what are we doing here? Because we can't win the war, so you're just throwing money down a hole, money that could be spent on Americans. Bob, you want a troll? California is a joke. There's so much in California. It's like, where are you starting that conversation? California's got some problems. Corn pop for your job. Whoop. No. Oh, no. Okay. For my job, do I want a war? No. I'm not talking, when I say foreign affairs, I'm talking about, do we care about having an influence on on other countries? Do we care about winning hearts and minds in other countries? It has nothing to do with war. As an example, we were doing some things to understand, well, I bid on a contract, I think I almost won it, where we wanted to understand in the Philippines the public's perception of the president, because they had a president who was bad-mouthing America. I mean, it was in the news all the time, bad-mouthing America. So we wanted to get a sense for, well, how does this impact Filipino people, their perceptions of America, tourism, all this stuff? And I put together a really good bid for how I was going to do it. I actually think that my bid was the front runner, but then there was an earthquake in the Philippines. This is going back years ago. This is back when Obama was in office, and the project just went away. Those types of projects are the types of projects that I'm looking for. I don't want war. A lot of stuff doesn't have anything to do with war. It has to do with foreign perceptions of America, or our ability to have an impact on certain types of things. So, it could be something like, America exports and perception of the quality of the American exports by locals. Those types of things give me a chance to bid on certain contracts. And if I can bid on those contracts, yeah, I can change my life. If I get a chance to do that, I want to do that. But that's sort of a separate thing. I do know that right now, that is not as much of a focus for Trump. Doesn't mean he can't change his mind. I'm just talking about where his head is right now, and kind of what I saw come through the feed in the 4 years he was president. So that's one of the things that I have to think about. Corn Pop said Russia needs Ukraine to not be in NATO as a buffer state. Yes. We have been taking on new NATO members all around Russia, which was against our previous agreement. Yes. And that is why the Ukraine conflict was foreseeable. Like, we basically, I'm an American. Look, I'm an American. I support America 100%. So if we're at war with somebody, I don't really care. Like, I'm America first. But I do understand the issues with Ukraine. I do understand agreements were made about what Ukraine was going to be able to do with their independence. And Ukraine was being given a lot more latitude than was promised, and that's led to a lot of the problems. Electric vehicles is one of the problems. In what regard, Bob? Corn Pop, okay, so you're not building missiles. Yeah, no, I'm not. Yeah, I don't deal with combat, with ordnance, with any of that. I deal with basic, everyday stuff. If we run a radio show in another country and we want to know if people are listening to it, I can do the research to tell you what percent of people are listening and who they are and why. I can do all that stuff, and I can pull together really good reports on that. But people have to want them. I have this light. My ring light gets hot. So Yeah, I want those types of contracts because the way they work, you get a contract, you'll get a 3-year contract, and what happens is the first year is a probation year. They test you out to see if you do good work. If you do good work that first year, the next 2 years are guaranteed. So you do the first year really good, and the second 2 years you look at how to do the work and cut costs. So you're still providing great work, but now you're making more profit, and you can set yourself up for life if you get a good contract. Are you in the UHF? What's UHF? I'm sure you'll tell me, and there'll be a no duh. But let me come back to some of the comments on people commenting on the rallies that are going to be happening and who they think is better or worse. Now, Jimma9185 said 81 million votes, yet I've yet to see any Biden hats, T-shirts, or flags. And that led to this whole string where somebody said, yeah, because we don't shove our beliefs down other people's throats. Someone said they saw 2 bumper stickers. I mean, the whole... Okay, so I'll come back to that. So, now, 81 million votes is kind of funny because I'll see people who will doubt 81 million votes, which is what Biden had during the last election. And I never fully understand it because I'm like, wait a minute, you don't believe Biden could get 81, but you do believe Trump could get 75. Well, explain to me how you believe Trump can get 75, but you don't believe Biden can get 81. I don't understand that. If you're saying that the numbers are kind of out of whack, the jump from 2016 to 2020 was weird, okay, that's one conversation. But if you're just arbitrarily saying 75 million is achievable, 81 million is not, then you kind of lose credibility on that. Now, as far as people say this a lot, they say when they're driving across the country, they don't see as many Biden stickers and Biden flags as Trump flags. That kind of gets into the maps. If you were driving across America, I would expect you to see way more Trump support with, decals and signs and all of that. I would expect you to see more Trump support because if you just look at a state, most of the state is going to support Trump, driving from one end to the other. But it's a lot of small towns. The difference is that when you get to those big cities where the population is, that's where Biden gets all his support. So you might have 10 miles of small towns before you get to a big city. But that big city's got so much population that it dwarfs the 10 miles of small towns you've been through. So yeah, sure, you saw those signs for Trump, but when you got to the big city, there was so much support for Biden in that big city that it didn't matter. That's the difference. This election is an election of big cities versus small towns. And that's going to be really important in determining who wins the election. Let me see. Oh, are you in the UHF or VHF radio? So it doesn't really. Well, I don't really listen to. Personally, I'm on YouTube all the time. I don't listen to regular radio, but it's more about countries. Like we did. I was looking at a bid for. It was actually some work in the Middle East where there was a radio show that was running, and we wanted to know if people were listening to it, because some of the content on there was pro-West. It wasn't anti-Western content. It's like, are people interested in this kind of content? And I was going to have to run a study. It was a weird study because of the way you have to meet people. Like you had to coordinate having people go to like someone's house and potentially have a woman go to this woman's house because only a woman can interview a woman, but the woman's going to have a male chaperone. Like it was a very complicated thing to have to pull together to figure out how to interview people and ask them what they're listening to. But I know how to do that stuff. It's work. So I didn't really care what format people were listening to. I just wanted to know if they were listening. And yeah, when those types of projects are coming down the feed, I love that kind of stuff because that means I can bid on stuff and probably give a great price for a great service. Hopefully win a bid. So I need more of those. Radiant pride flags, yeah. Is this Pride Month? I think this is Pride. Was last month Pride Month or is this month Pride Month? I don't remember. Um, it gets complex. You don't want to back a nuclear power like Russia into a corner. They are not our enemy. Russia is stronger than they were in the 90s. Also, immigrants cost the taxpayers 137 billion. Yeah, you're right. That's the whole thing. World War III can't happen, and that's why we don't have troops in the Ukraine, and we're not gonna have troops in the Ukraine. And that's why Russia and Ukraine are having their fight right now. So Corn Pop, yeah, Corn Pop is absolutely right. Ukraine is going to be part of Russia again. It's just a matter of when. But yeah, give it some time. That's the way that's going to play out. After their 13 billion contribution, Rocky the Boxer. Let me see. We need Russia to be in alliance with USA, but because they're a conservative country with morals, our government won't do it. Russia and the U.S. coming together, I don't know how that would happen. That's a very complicated. Yeah, that's interesting, but I don't see that happening. I don't know how that could happen. 13 billion per year. Eddie the Eagle has landed. Eddie the Eagle, welcome. Oh yeah, and if you're new to the show, click like and subscribe and click the notification bell so that when more pop-up lives happen, you can participate. Corn Pop agrees with Rocky the Boxer. Where was he? Yeah, that's an interesting idea, but that is very, very complicated. That's not easy to pull. Yeah, it'd take a genius to pull that off. No Eddie, no fear. No Eddie, no fear. We need to unite as proud Americans. We cannot do that with the new age media. Radio is our only hope. They can't censor it. It's where real information can be preserved. Okay, I'm trying to follow the logic there. Now, we need to be more united. We are very divided right now. We are more partisan than we've been in a very long time right now. That gets in the way of us focusing on what Americans need to do. Yeah, I agree. Do we need, I don't know, I think things like this. I think YouTube and social media is a great platform if it's used well. Creating spaces where people can come together and talk, where you can have bipartisan conversations, where you can have people who have influence actually hear the other side talking and think about what the implications of that are. Yeah, I think that can work. Radio, in my opinion, is kind of a dead medium at this point. And let's face it, you've got TV, which is, traditional TV, ABC, NBC, CBS. That's basically that's dying a slow death. More people are on YouTube watching, YouTube content than watch TV. You've got YouTube, TikTok, Messenger. All of those do more to influence Americans than traditional TV does. And you got to lean into the tools that people are using. If everybody wants to be on YouTube and TikTok, then you need to get your message out on YouTube and TikTok. That's where fish where the fish are. And that's where the fish are. But people are slow to change, so it's going to take some time. If Russia's goal was to stop NATO expansion, they failed. More countries have joined. I don't think this is about. I think this is Russia's issue is very specifically Ukraine. It's not this broader thing. Russia doesn't want Ukraine to be part of NATO. They don't want Ukraine to be, basically democratic. That's a security risk for them. Not NATO. Okay, so kind of coming back. Well, we have a very informed audience tonight. I like this. Let me see. We were talking about the rallies, and we got into this whole. There's no visual of supporters at Biden rallies because neither exists. So this person doesn't believe that Biden has supporters. Biden hasn't had rallies yet. He will. Let me see. Corn Pop said I skipped him. Whole. No, you said you agree with Rocky the Boxer. I got that. Unless there's something else that I missed further back. We talked about not building the missiles. Yeah, Trump's done more rallying of late. Biden has been kind of different. Biden's been focusing more on interviews and kind of public speaking events and fundraising. He's eventually going to have to rally, but he hasn't been rallying the way Trump has. Now, you can argue the impact of some of Trump's rallies. Like everybody saw that Trump had that huge rally in Wildwood, New Jersey. I would argue that Trump's rally was that Wildwood, New Jersey rally was kind of pointless because New Jersey's not going to vote Republican. New Jersey hasn't voted Republican in over 20 years. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was a big rally. It was great for the video and the views. Trump's rally in the Bronx. Again, New York. New York is not going to vote Republican. New York and New Jersey are Democratic. That's how it's been since George W. Bush Sr. So that's not going to change. But let me see. I skipped Corn Pop before Lucas. And Eddie the Eagle says I missed his comment. Let me see. Eddie, I got the no Eddie, no fear. The Eagle has landed. Let me see. Before Lucas. Now let me see. Corn Pop and how far back can I go? So Corn Pop, we got your comments on Russia needs Ukraine to not be part of NATO. Agreed with that. Talked about I'm not building missiles. Nope, that's not me. It's complex because yeah, you don't want to back a nuclear power like Russia into the corner. Immigrants cost okay, I didn't read that part. I don't think I did. Immigrants cost taxpayers 137 billion. I haven't. Okay, that's a new number to me. After their 13 billion contribution annually. Now that's a new. Okay, so I didn't string that together. I have to look into that. That's interesting. 137 billion. I have to. Yeah, I want to see the numbers. I would. I guess I have a hard time thinking about that because if we're saying they cost 137 billion, I'm assuming we're talking about healthcare and education. And if we're saying that we're spending more on their healthcare and education than we're making from their work, it's kind of interesting because they're not taking high paying jobs. So you're not making that much, but your healthcare and your education are expensive. I wouldn't necessarily doubt that, but if that's the case, then what that would take me to is, aren't we losing money on Americans in general? The average salary in America is like around $50,000, $50,000, more than the immigrants are making, but still, that's not that much. So I would assume that people's health care and education is going to cost America more than they're making, if I'm doing that math. So yeah, I would need to dig into that more. And Eddie the Eagle, what else did I miss from you, Eddie? Now we got the no Eddie, no fear. Where are we? I got no Eddie, no fear. If you had another comment, then it either got deleted or it got buried in like some spam from India Vesky. Because he had a lot of spam and I probably lost some things in that. So yeah, I'll definitely take a look at the cost of immigrants versus the contribution. That's an interesting bit of math. But I got to look at that. And I got to compare that to kind of the cost versus contribution of Americans in general, because that's what I'd want to compare. Are we all losing money, or are we all, are some of us contributing and others not? Let me see. It also helps. Some people are Trump for America first. Trump's got very passionate supporters. It also helps a little bit that Trump did a good job his first 4 years. I do think Trump did a pretty good job his first 4 years. COVID hit. Economy went into the toilet during COVID. COVID's not Trump's fault, but he was president when COVID hit. You're the president. You accept the praise. You accept the blame. He's the one. That's part of his legacy for his first term. Um, oh, Trump supporters are criticizing. They're saying that Biden does have visuals in his rallies. It's blue hairs and psychotics. Uh, if I see somebody with blue hair, I would assume that they're a liberal, but maybe I'll be surprised. Trump's PR team has something legitimate to sell. I think Biden's PR team has something legitimate to sell too. I think Trump's PR team does a better job of controlling the narrative. Biden's team just seems to sit back and they're running from issues that they shouldn't be running from. They're running from a conversation about immigration that they shouldn't be running from. That one in particular, that's Biden's big Achilles heel, is immigration. People are laughing at Build Back Better. You don't need good marketing when all you have to do is cheat. Yeah. There are people who are going to go to their grave believing that the 2020 election was rigged. I understand that. I don't believe it was rigged, and I just haven't seen the evidence. And if people send me stuff, I try to investigate it. 2,000 mules, all this stuff, and it always comes up the same, debunked every single time. So I want to see some evidence. I just want to see some hard evidence. But that's me. Let me see. Corn Pop says, so he's saying because of our contribution, we're correct about immigration. It's their net contribution versus their net expenditure, including healthcare and all that. Americans are absolutely not all carrying their weight. But there are ever increasing numbers of immigrants coming, way faster than they can possibly assimilate. And it takes more resources to catch the kids up to normal with a language barrier. So yeah, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I just don't know the math. Here's my general question. And this is, I generally have like these mega ideas that kind of lead me down paths of how I approach issues. I won't pretend to know all the nuances around immigration, but I do know this. We could prevent immigrants from coming in to a much greater degree than we do now. The laws are on the books. We're not talking about needing to create laws. We're talking about needing to enforce laws that already exist. We call it illegal immigration. So it's not legally happening. We're just allowing it. Like allowing somebody to speed 70 miles an hour on a 65 mile an hour highway. When I see that, my question becomes, why? If we're letting them in, it's not like we don't know they're coming. It's not like we haven't decided to allow it. We decide to close the borders when the immigration levels get too high. So we could lower that standard. We could do lots of things, but we don't. And that's where you have to ask the question, why not? If we aren't preventing them from coming in, what's the reason? I don't think Trump does things without reason. I don't think Biden does things without reason. I don't think Biden is saying, well, I just want the immigrants to come in so they can have a better life in America than they would in Mexico. I don't think that's it at all. I think there's a benefit that he's looking at. Hasn't clearly articulated what it is, but he's saying the immigrants coming in helps us. And however that is, and some of that's economic, I think a lot of it's economic, but whatever that is, that's why we're allowing immigration in the levels that we are. Should that be more clearly articulated? Absolutely. If you're going to let all the immigrants come in and you know that voters have a problem with it and you expect to be reelected, you might want to explain that to people. Because the guy who's in the other corner is talking about the illegal immigration and closing the borders, and that's something people can understand, and that means that's something people can vote behind. Biden, yeah, I've said this almost every time I do a show. I am not impressed with Biden's PR team. They are basically leaving this huge Achilles heel that they don't deal with it. They don't talk about it. They don't address an issue that everybody cares about, and that it seems like it would be easy to start a conversation around that makes sense. Like, I need people to take these low-paying jobs so that Americans don't have to worry about them, but they still get the food and the medicines and all the basic necessities. They still get the basics because we've got people filling these jobs. That seems like the right start to the conversation, but nobody's having it, not on the Biden camp. And if he loses, that's going to be part of it. He could have fixed that. So let me see. We talked about the ever-increasing numbers of immigrants coming in. And it takes, let me see. Gone to get milk. We were all immigrants at one point. Yeah, yes, I guess technically. But we're talking about legal versus illegal immigration, so it's a little bit different. If we're talking, I forget the numbers. I think a little bit more than half of the immigration into the United States, little known fact, is actually legal immigration. So most of the immigration into the United States is legal. It's just that's not the narrative. There's a lot of it that's illegal, so I'm not going to pretend like illegal is only 10%. It's a significant portion, but it's actually the smaller portion. We just don't talk. The narrative around that hasn't been spun correctly, and it should be because people don't understand that issue. So we'll see what Biden does on that. Because if I'm Trump, when we have the first debate, that's one of the things that I am going to attack Biden on if I'm Trump. Absolutely. And I want to see what he has to say. Let me see. People are complaining about how Biden couldn't fill a stadium if he had a rally. I think he could fill a stadium. I don't know if he'd get as many people as Trump got at Wildwood, but yeah, Biden could get supporters at a rally. People are saying that Trump supporters are a cult. I don't agree with that, but I understand the whole, you see a movement, so you can feel that. Now this guy, Cerberus Warlord 8126, had a different view. His idea for elections is give both candidates some power and see what they do with it. So I guess he's saying it's like a battle royale. I'm going to give you a little power, I'm going to give you a little power. Let's see what you do with it, and whoever does the better job becomes president. I don't know how that would ever work, but it's a different idea on how to elect a president, more merit-based. Trump fills stadiums. He filled a stadium. Wildwood's had crazy numbers. We've got more Trump support. Build Back Better for Joe Biden. Somebody's laughing at that. Trump is going to make America great again like he did before. Okay. That's a weird comment. Trump made America great again, and he's going to... Was America... If what does America's great again look like? If we're saying America's great again looks like Trump 2 years into his presidency, okay, that's not exactly a high... Yeah, sure, I think he'll hit that. I think he could hit that. I think a lot of people could hit that. Towards the end of his presidency, when we were dealing with COVID and recovering from that, I wouldn't say that we were in America's great standpoint right there. Again, COVID's not his fault, but no, I don't want to live through another global pandemic. Make America great again is interesting because there's no endpoint. Like, we want things to be better. And there's no definition of what that needs to look like. That's part of the beauty of it. It's like, we want things to be better than they are now. If you're saying that there's an endpoint, then what is it? Because where we were 2 years into his presidency, that was nice, but no, I don't think that's it. I think Reagan had us in a really good place. Reagan got overwhelming support for his second term, because he had the country in a place where just about everybody was happy, where party lines didn't really seem to matter anymore. Everybody liked what they were seeing and just said, give me 4 more years of this. I don't know that I've seen us in a place where that has been the case of late. It's more, we seem to vote against candidates nowadays more so than for candidates. It's not like people are saying they want Biden or they want Trump. Well, Trump supporters are saying they want Trump. Biden supporters seem to be saying they don't want Trump. And you do get some Trump supporters who are saying they don't want Biden. It's like everybody's picking the lesser of two evils, more so than feeling like they've got this person who they support. But Trump supporters do seem to have a little bit more support for him. Their vote for Trump seems to be more rooted in them believing in him than the Biden camp, which a lot of times really seems to be rooted in them disliking Trump. Let me see. Can we lower the number of incoming immigrants through executive order or legislation? Yeah, I mean, Biden can just close the border. He did. We don't actually need more laws to lower the number of immigrants who are coming in. We just have to decide to enforce the law. We have to say, look, we are going to enforce this. They're coming in illegally. We're going to stop them, and turn them back. That's it. We don't need a policy. We need to decide that it's something that we really care about. Because clearly, I'm saying it's something that we don't really care about because we're letting them come in. We know they're coming in. We're letting them come in, which tells me we don't really care and begs the question why. The Biden followers do in fact have blinders on. They can't see the truth. I don't know about that, King Cruiser. I think Biden supporters and Trump supporters just have different priorities. Biden supporters are prioritizing some things that Trump supporters are not, and vice versa. And that's why you've got two candidates in a divided nation right now, is because there are two very different camps looking at this and saying, I think one guy's good and the other guy's not so good. Corn Pop said that's stupid. Lucas Drennan, King Cruiser, all caps. Are you yelling? Corn Pop, he made America profitable again. Lucas Drennan, Reagan brought us trickle-down economics, widening the wealth gap. True. When people are all doing well financially as a result of their own labor, they're happier. That is also true. Taxes and stuff ruin the incentive for hard work. We said taxes and stuff. I think the tiers. Yes and no. I mean, everybody's grown up with taxes, so taxes aren't new. Tiered taxes can start to get really tricky because it's a weird thing where the more you make, the higher the tax. You fall into different tax brackets. So if you're making a little bit of money, you might only be getting taxed at 15%. If you're making a lot of money, you're going to be getting taxed at like 30%. I think athletes start getting taxed at closer to like 50%. I mean, it gets kind of stupid until you get to a point where you're making so much money that you got the kind of tax attorneys that know all the tricks. And then you go from getting taxed really heavily to getting taxed at nearly nothing. We always hear the stories about the ultra wealthy and how they pay next to nothing in taxes. Well, when you get to the point where you can afford the genius tax attorney, yeah, that's part of the benefit. I don't think that taxes are a disincentive to people because we've had taxes all our life. I do think that people would like to be taxed less. And I think people want to see taxes done fairly. But I don't think that's ever going to happen. What is it? I think there are, if you look at the economics of America, there are a handful of people, like less than 20 people, who control like half of the wealth in America. When you think about how many billions of dollars Elon Musk has, Mark Zuckerberg has, etc. There are a couple of people who control most of the wealth in the nation. And here's why that's important. If I've got, let's say, 10 people who control half the wealth in America, they don't even have to like each other. But I can get them into a room and say, look, I need us all to agree that we're going to vote on a certain issue a certain way because it benefits us. And even though we hate each other, this benefits everybody in the group, so we can agree we're going to vote on this issue a certain way. Namely, we want our taxes, we want more control over how we're being taxed. We want to contribute to the campaign funds of people who are going to help us. We want to minimize the political efforts of people who are going to hurt us. And they're just a small number of people, so it's too easy to get them aligned on an issue. Then on the other side of the camp, you got millions of people with different agendas, and you can't get all of them aligned, not nearly to the extent that you can get those 10 rich people aligned. So we are kind of stuck in that camp, but I think that people, for the most part, are willing to work hard if they feel like their efforts are going to be rewarded. You want to feel like you can prosper. And if I don't know many people who aren't willing to work hard if they feel that they can prosper. I do know people who don't feel that they can prosper, and so they're not that motivated to do much. I don't take that camp. I still say get off the couch and do something. But, I get it. Reagan trickle-down theory is still creating vast income disparity. Sure, trickle-down does. But the question is more, does everybody feel like they're getting a bite of the pie? And even though some people are getting bigger bites than others, the big question is, do you feel like you're getting a bite of this pie? And if you do, then you're generally happier than if you feel like you're not getting anything at all. That was part of Reagan's appeal, is a lot of people felt like they were getting a bite of the pie. King Cruiser, my bad, I wasn't yelling. Okay. Yeah, when you type in all caps, that's the assumption. Okay, Kelly Phelps. Welcome, Kelly. All Americans need to understand who the actual enemy is. Okay, I'm hoping you will elaborate on that. King Cruiser, I'm sorry if I offended anyone. Lucas Drennan, it's all good. I picked up your message, King. Okay, we're good. Cornpop, we need to make things easier for the middle class. They're the ones generating most of the taxes. We need to grow the middle class. Yes, agree with that. But I think we have to figure out how. Create more middle class jobs. Yeah. Growing the middle class is tough because it's not like we just start paying people more. We create jobs, like Trump's got his whole drilling thing, which it's not that many jobs, but it is good paying middle class jobs. Biden's ideas for moving more people into tech type stuff can work, but that's not going to help. That's not going to help the current working force. That's going to help the next generation. So it takes a little bit too long for what he's proposing to actually kick in. It does reap benefits when we finally have people moving into tech, potentially straight out of high school, but that's going to take a long time to build. Ronald Gambler, top 1%. Yeah, they live a different, they've got a different approach. I have a hard time seeing while typing. Lost my bifocals. Are you, okay, if you're on your, I get that if you're on your phone especially. So, let me see, revenue. By definition, everyone can't be the top 1%. Agreed. I'm not even talking about the top 1%. I'm talking about the top 1% of the top 1%. That small group controls most of the economy in America. Now GPA growing, stock market new highs. Biden theory, bottom up, middle out. I don't know where people are on top down versus bottom up. I see merit to both. I think we saw when everybody got stimulus checks. When people get money, they do stimulate the economy. People got stimulus checks. They started spending it on stupid stuff, but people were spending their money because they had it. If you go top down, a company makes money and they generally reinvest it in their business. So that's not necessarily helping people. But if reinvesting in their business means they hire more people to help them grow, that does create jobs. So I can see that. George and Alex Soros, unions help. Depends on where you are. Unions can help. Unions are very useful in some areas. Auto workers, I think of in particular, unions seem to work very well there. Um, Other places, I don't know if unions necessarily, like Screen Actors Guild, I don't know if that's bringing the best. I don't know if that really works for people. That seems to create more, in my opinion, I think that's more harm than good, but we're stuck with it. Middle class in America is dead. Um, I wouldn't say it's dead. I mean, clearly we're a land of the haves and the have-nots. I think that the middle class is actually part of the have-nots. That's the issue. But yeah, I mean, being middle class does not necessarily mean you've got the financial independence you might want. You have to really be rich to have financial independence in America. But being middle class means, if you can understand your ability to provide for your family, put your kids into college, and retire, well, honestly, you're probably middle class. But like you're middle class, you don't feel desperation, but you clearly know you got to work until you've retired, and you got to live modestly after that. I think people want to be able to do more than that. We don't necessarily believe it's possible. I live in the Ohio Valley. We have never stopped drilling. It's constant. Drilling is good jobs. Ooh, wait. Okay, we have. I do not know how to read Arabic, but hello, my good friend. So hello to you. If you can tell me how to pronounce your name in English, I'll try to do that. I can't copy paste from my phone. Maybe I can. Well, I'm not going to try to. I might actually lose my call. Got a lot of global people in here today. That's pretty good. We're setting oil records and energy independence. Look, we produce more oil than any other country in the world. We produce more oil than Saudi Arabia. I was surprised to find that out. I think Saudi Arabia scaled down, but yeah, we have energy independence right now. We produce more oil. We have years of reserves that are proven. We've got more years of reserves that are unproven. We have it. Question is, what else can we do? Do we want to start to export? Can we be profitable as a leader in energy? Probably. Are we going to do that? Well, Biden's not going to do it because Biden wants to be part of the Paris Accord and deal with the whole climate change thing, which people can be in different places on. I'm still figuring out where my position is on that. I do agree that I don't think you can debate whether or not there is global warming, but I do think you can debate kind of its significance and how you solve it, and whether it makes any difference what we do if the whole world isn't all on the same page about it being an issue. If we're working on this, but Russia's not and North Korea's not, my understanding is it doesn't matter what we do. The whole world has to play ball, or we're just putting Band-Aid on a mortal wound. So I can understand the arguments for saying, screw it, drill, baby, drill. Let me see, Corn Pop. We need less regulation in general. Elon says historically war has reduced regulation and allows innovation that at some point as society gets so much regulation it strangles itself. Yeah, I agree with that. War leads to less regulation. That's interesting. I never thought about it that way, but it makes sense. Because, you don't have time you have a lot of rules because you have a lot of people with time on their hands to overthink stuff. That goes away in wartime. People have to focus on the bottom line. It gets real nitty gritty, and nobody's wasting time on nonsense. So sure, get rid of regulation that wastes time because we can't afford the bureaucracy. And then once you have less regulation, you get more innovation. I get that. I'm not advocating for war, So if you're saying, look, turning lemons into lemonade, I get that. I wouldn't call it silver lining of wartime, but I'm not about to. I mean, I get where he's coming from. Let me see. Kelly Phelps for Dems. George and Alex Soros for Dems. Let me see where we're going. We're setting oil worldwide prices. Sure. actually exporting oil. Yeah, we produce enough to do it. We could be. I don't know if we're the leader in oil exports. I know we're the leader in production, but I don't know our export versus, like, Saudi Arabia's got so much in reserve. I don't know what their export versus our export actually looks like. Um, middle class is Middle class now is technically well over 100K. The middle class is dead, and that's a problem. Well, see, that's two different things. Now, if we're saying the middle class is now over 100K, it's the middle class. It's just that what the middle class looks like now is not what the middle class looked like 30 years ago. Yeah, it takes a lot more to be middle class now than it did once upon a time. And with prices the way they're continuing to skyrocket, middle class, the income level needed to become middle class, it's just going to keep going up. If you got a family of four and you're making $100,000 as a household, I think you can get by. You got enough money to feed your kids, pay your mortgage, cover the two cars, health care, maybe take a vacation every year. Hope that your 401k provides you with enough money so that you can live on it once you retire. Pay off your mortgage in 30 years. Yeah, I think you can see a way to make it to the end, but at no point in your journey do you see yourself ever really thriving. You're just kind of getting by. And that's kind of what middle class has become now. You're making enough to get by. You can check the boxes on what you want in your life, but you might never actually, you can live your whole life and never really enjoy it. My grandfather, I kind of feel like my grandfather did that. He worked his whole life, two jobs. He had an auto garage and he worked at an automotive plant. And basically he worked until he got old and he got sick, and passed away. And aside from that last little bit of time where he was sick and wasn't working, he worked his whole life. Didn't take vacation, didn't take sick days. Now, he's one of those old school guys. He got out there and he got the job done. And I respect that. But I do want to enjoy my life. I want to be able to get to a point where I'm not just working and paying for my kids' education and all, my mortgage and all of that stuff. I want to reap the benefits of this and enjoy it. And I don't think enough people get to do that right now. Let me see, the per year income, middle class is dead and that's a problem, 100K per year. Yeah. Don't free Palestine. Don't free Palestine. Well, how does that agreement work? I mean, I believe that ceasefire agreement, if I understand it right, Israel troops are going out. Both sides agree to no more conflict, and they're going to rebuild. But I don't think when you're saying don't free Palestine, technically I think Palestine would consider themselves free at that point until the next conflict. It's China and India we need to worry about, not Russia and North Korea. From a production standpoint, I agree. Everything we have is made in China. And you got 1 billion people in India who are hardworking and building that economy. Sure, from an economic standpoint, China is our biggest threat. I agree with that. But I don't think of China being, actually China as a rival, as a war rival. It's interesting because they've got tech on their side. And the technical attacks they could launch against us actually adds a whole different dimension to what a conflict could look like. But yeah, I agree. We need to be mindful of China and India. They are threats to our leadership position in the world. Through the Act's first ever expansion of clean energy. Okay. Corn Pop, exactly. I think we can do it without war. Yeah. First time ecology expansion. Ukraine arms supports U.S. manufacturing. First time ecology expansion. Tell me what you mean there, Ronald. Let me see. Corn Pop, middle class is a smaller segment of the population. Middle class is still pretty good, but it's the same as it always was. Less and less people have even the standard of life is a problem. I guess, what do we mean there? Like home ownership. I think home ownership is about, home ownership has come down. Actually, once upon a time, but we have to go way back to be fair. 50 years ago, yeah, sure. You're like 19, 20. You're probably, you're dating or getting married to some woman, and you're buying a house with a crazy mortgage. You got your car, you got your picket fence, and you're starting your family. And you're a baby boomer, so you're coming from a generation where you had big families, and that's kind of what you aspire to. Now, you don't have the means that your parents did. So if we're talking middle class, yeah, sure, your dollar doesn't go as far as your parents' dollars did, but you still can have the families and do the stuff. If you look now, kids are coming out of college, and kids don't, coming out of college, you're not buying a house. No way. You got an apartment, you got school loans, you're drowning in debt, and it's going to take you a while before you feel like you're stable enough to be able to think about buying a home. Now, if you get married, great, that does help, but marriage rates are on the decline. Marriage is a less attractive proposition to people, which goes back to an earlier point about how our family values have eroded and will continue to erode. We don't have the same priority around the nuclear family anymore that we used to. Maybe that's part of the problem, maybe not, but that's the reality. People are working hard kind of for themselves, not for their families. And it's a lot harder to make it on your own than it is when you've got a family and a shared vision. So, yeah, I can see the point. The middle class is dwindling. What we can do about it, though, I don't know that there's much we can do. I don't think class anymore. I just think they're the haves and the have-nots. And most of us are in the have-nots. Some of us, we're doing better than others, but we're basically we're still all the have-nots. There are a few people who are the haves, and if you're not in that club, you're never going to be in that club. It doesn't seem to be one that you can just break into. People that work full-time cannot even afford an apartment on minimum wage. They're not high school students. Yeah, if you're making minimum wage, you're going to struggle. You're not going to live a quote-unquote middle-class life if you're making minimum wage. But if somebody's making minimum wage, I'd really challenge them to think about their job, because there are a lot of opportunities to make better than minimum wage today, especially with all of the online stuff that's available now, with the access to jobs through the internet now. Most people should be able to beat minimum wage just by doing a little bit of research into jobs that are available in their area. Corporate profits are at an all-time high. Look at the Fortune 500. Yeah, middle class now requires 2-income families. Now, that goes back to like 50 years ago. No, in the 50s, sure, you had, guy worked, the wife stayed home and managed the family. Those days are gone. That's never coming back. The poor are now stuck renting everything they have. The past poor at least had a house. Yeah, there's the have-nots. There was, what was it? I think it was Goldman Sachs. They started looking into kind of doing economic trends, and they basically realized that they should be buying lots of apartments and disposable goods and rental and focusing on rental services, because people aren't going to own things anymore. People are going to have to focus on renting things because of prices, and also because of our culture. Like, we've become a culture where kids nowadays don't necessarily want cars. I can Uber where I need to go. It's cheaper for me to Uber here and there when I need to than to keep a car and insurance and all of that stuff. So our mindset around ownership and renting is different. They call it the marriage tax. Minimum wage is supposed to be raised with inflation back in the 50s, but it never did. Yeah, because they shifted to the two parent income, and once we shifted from the guy working to the husband and wife both work, prices changed because now people had two incomes, so they could afford more. Things got a lot more expensive, and that kind of started a really messy trend. Let me see. I bought my home at 19K. Okay, I don't know where you bought your home, but if you bought it at 19K, it's got to be worth a whole lot more than you paid for it. So, yeah, I'm hoping that you are planning for a very successful retirement. When women entered the workforce, we entered a temporary boom until wages stagnated. Yeah, women came in. First, they weren't being paid equally. They did. But then people realized, hey, you got two incomes. I can charge you a lot more for stuff. And they did. Thank you, Mr. Obama. Never thought. Thank you, Mr. Obama. Never thought we would own. Okay. Yeah. Some people. Yeah. There were some great first-time homeowner deals. There was a lot of good stuff. There's a lot that has happened to help to try to make things more accessible for people. Tom McGuire, are you going to vote for Trump or Biden? That's my question. So I'll come back to that for you, Tom. I answered that at the start of the show. I just want to go through a few more comments, and then we can come back to where I am again. My parents owned when I was born, but lost it all. A lot of people did. Maybe that was due to credit. A lot of people didn't know how to handle credit when they first got it. Kids leave high school without knowing. Let me see. Kids leave high school without knowing any real skills to get a job. High school is not designed to get people into the workforce anymore. Used to be. You see, yes, disposable. Now my daughter bought my wife and I a home with a pool for cash. Don't know what she does, but that's nice. They don't plan long term anymore. It's kind of hard to. When you got mountains of debt, people seem to be planning through debt cycles. You got out of school, you got a bunch of school loans, you got to pay those off. You can't really buy a house until you do that. Once you get out of the school debt, then you get into your mortgage debt. Now you got the house. That's going to last you 30 years, generally speaking. And then, if you're like 65, maybe you decide that you're going to get a retirement home, which can technically put you in more debt, but now you've got a little bit more disposable income. But you just live from one debt cycle to the next debt cycle to the next debt cycle. And like planning beyond that just doesn't really seem to happen. People have to raise minimum wage because that's disposable income. People buy more things, healthy economy. If minimum wage goes up, prices will go up. So we'll still be stuck in the same position that we're in. Here in Palm Coast, Florida, minimum wage should be about $50. I gotta take a quick sip, dry it out. Ronald Gambler says, my daughter's a successful real estate broker. Okay, I mean, kudos to her. She definitely seems to have, if she's buying you a house for cash, that's pretty amazing. Tom McGuire, if you make $70K a year, you want 100. Corn Pop says that's silly, Tom. I don't know. I mean, if Tom is saying people are never satisfied with what they have, I agree with that. Most people, even past 6 figures, most people live hand to mouth. I did the research on this. This is like 2/3, 70% of people. But what you have, it's weird. So if you're making $50,000 a year, you spend what you have, and you're living paycheck to paycheck. If you're making $110,000 a year, you spend what you have. You live paycheck to paycheck. You move into a nicer neighborhood, you get a nicer car, but basically you take everything you've got and you spend it on your lifestyle. So I do think that people, for the most part, they're trying to, keeping up with the Joneses. Most people are trying to keep up with the Joneses. And that's part of what gets people into trouble, is they don't stop to think about what they want out of life. They just think about what everybody else has. And trying to keep up keeps you in debt. If you can back away from that, well, then you might actually be able to enjoy your life. For me, case in point, I was on a vacation last year to the Philippines, realized I loved it there. Can't move there right now because I've got kids in school and I got to stay and I got a job and all of that. But when I realized how far my dollars went, I thought, my goodness, I could go to the Philippines and I could basically retire. If I lived in the Philippines right now, I could basically retire because of the cost of living over there. Figure, you can buy a house on the beach for like $15,000. The cost of living, groceries and all of that is pretty low. You don't need a lot of money to live a very nice lifestyle over there. But I'm an American. I got my responsibilities. I got family to take care of. So that's not something I can really consider anytime soon. But it does go to the point of finding a situation where you don't have to worry about money, where your primary focus for living isn't keeping up with your debt. It's like enjoying your life. And that's kind of where you start to turn the corner and really take advantage of what you have. Let me see. Fruit Loop says, "Hey, can you shout out my dad? His name is..." Oh, okay. At least that was a good troll, but no, that ain't happening, buddy. You got to try a little harder than that. Tom McGuire, look at our deficit. Ronald Gamber and 50 would have to rent about 2,000 for one. Maybe I didn't understand. People need to live within their means. Going into debt is not a good idea. I agree that they should, but that's just not how people live. Ronald Gamber, I don't have a mortgage to pay, but still have to budget carefully. Corn pot for clothes and people. One old car, insurance and house insurance. One old car, insurance and house insurance. So Ronald, it sounds like you're in a good. Are you retired? Yeah, you're the retired vet. So you got a good situation. And I would say enjoy it because you're in a spot that a lot of people don't necessarily get to enjoy themselves. I look forward to the day where I am retired and I'm getting to enjoy myself and spending more time doing pursuing the things that I really have passions for, than just kind of working to try to make ends meet and do all of that. Mark Goodyear, Harris. Okay. It is like almost 10 o'clock. So I wasn't expecting to have as knowledgeable an audience tonight as I did. Had some really great comments. We got people who've been studying up. They know their stuff, and I appreciate that. I encourage everyone to like and subscribe. So I would love to have a conversation with you guys. Since you've actually inspired me to actually do a little more research, a couple of things came up that I need to look into for the next show. Normally we focus on Trump, Biden, and the 2024 election, but we do get into the issues. Tonight we clearly got into a deeper dive conversation about the economy. And it makes sense because the economy is going to be one of the biggest issues that people vote on when they're choosing the president for 2024. And depending upon where you are, you're going to feel like Trump or Biden is going to do a better job of putting dollars in your pocket. If you happen to live in Michigan or Wisconsin, then I'm particularly curious to hear from you because I think that you're in one of the states that is going to decide the election, but that's still TBD. Generally, I do my shows Tuesdays, 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. Sometimes I get other shows in. It just kind of depends on my schedule. But I try to give you guys something consistent so you know when to find me. Definitely encourage you to check out the videos. We got a lot of content on the election. And leave a comment because I love some of the comments I was getting tonight and would love to do some research to kind of dig into some of these issues. My name is Gene. I'm the last good man in Jersey, and I am signing out.